8th. It is 6:30. We have a quorum, and the agenda was properly posted. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 4 is public appearances, public's opportunity to speak on any subject that is not a specific agenda item. These two folks are, those are our items already. All right, then we'll move on. Next item is discuss and consider the meeting minutes from the Planning Commission from November 13th.
Motion to approve is presented.
Second, okay. Motion and second. Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Any abstained? Motion carries. All right. Item 6 is a opening of a public hearing. It's an opportunity for public to provide input regarding the request from Ferris Auto to amend existing conditional use permit for their facility at 12212 West Cottage Grove. Permit construction of additional paved area bounded by a privacy fence and to review conditions of operation. Just to kind of walk through the flow of the public hearing, we will just, if anybody wants to speak, feel free to grab a sign-up sheet back there. We'll hear from Ferris in this case and Aaron, as well as other staff. Any comments, then the commission certainly could ask questions. We'll open for public comments. Please do not exceed 3 minutes because we certainly want to capture all that. And if you do want to speak, we do need to fill out the form so we capture that for public record. So with that, Aaron?
Yeah, so Gerard Ferris is here, one of the Ferris brothers that owns and operates the business. So I can give a little bit of a background here in a second, but basically the business did receive a conditional use permit back in April of 2015. At that time, the brothers did not own the property. They were leasing it from UW Credit Union. They have since purchased it. I'm not sure exactly when, last year or two.
It was about 2 years ago.
There have been a few complaints that have come in over the years, primarily regarding the number of cars parked out in front. To some extent, I think the condition of them as well. We started working with the business to try and find a more permanent solution to allow them to operate but fit more successfully in with the neighborhood and keep some of that activity much more hidden. So what we're looking at here today, there's 3 phases that kind of represent what they ultimately envision for the site. What we're really focused on, I think, is this first phase here, which is what they would like to do as soon as the weather permits in the spring, which is add a approximately 60 by 200 foot paved area back behind to the south of the existing buildings. And that would be completely enclosed in on, in this first phase, on 3 sides, to the east, west, and south, with a privacy fence at least 6 feet. It could be as high as 8. That's kind of the upper limit of our ordinance. With a gate on it, just to keep all these extra vehicles enclosed in a spot where they can't really be seen from the surrounding neighborhood. Following that, the next step they'd like to do is take down the sheds that used to house the old lawnmower repair business that's on the site, and put up a new sales building. Along with that, I think we would want them to enclose that northern edge of the parking lot as well with a similar matching fence. And then the final step after the building's constructed would be to repair or possibly replace the pavement out in front, and put in any landscaping and signage at that point. By the end of all of that, we should have a pretty nice looking business there. I think the goal, at least, was to get that building in sometime this summer.
Yes. Yep.
So when they have that, a little bit further along in the design process, they would come back here and get the approval for, what that building looks like and things like that. As well as for any other improvements, landscaping and that sort of thing in front. In the staff report, we did have several conditions that we would put on any approval. First of which, any signage related to auto sales would be restricted to signage just within the windows of the vehicles themselves. No inoperable or salvage vehicles would be stored on site unless they're in the immediate queue to get repaired or they're located behind the fence. No unpaved area shall be used for vehicle parking, storage, or circulation. Any new signage would require a sign permit. It's a separate process. Standard condition, the permit applies just to this business, just to this location. Phase 1 shall include the elements that are shown on the plan: paving, fencing, landscaping. And then prior to starting any work, we'd want you to coordinate with the engineer on looking at stormwater issues, grading, that kind of thing. We want to make sure we're not, this water hits the pavement, it's going to go somewhere. We want it to stay on site and not disrupt the neighbors. So we'll have our engineers look at that in a little more detail. As I said, prior to initiating phase 2, they would come back here with the design drawings of the buildings for plan commission and board approval. Same with phase 3; those could be done at the same time if that's more convenient and how the work plays out. Cars for sale on the property would be limited to the spaces on the north edge, west of the driveway, or I don't know if you do online sales, but if those vehicles could be back behind the fence.
Who pointed that on the map? Sorry.
These right here. And then generally, cars awaiting repair shall be stored within the fenced area. We're suggesting
Say it again. I'm sorry.
Anita.
Perfect. So I live behind your business, which I'm also a business owner, so I appreciate you coming to Cottage Grove and being part of the community, which I think is great. Years ago, when I started my business, I came to the board. Many of you, some of you haven't even lived in Cottage Grove at that point in time. And one of the things that I had to do was come here and get my sign approved, which is great because it was important to have my sign approved for the village, to have that look good, right? Like, it was just a sign. And I remember Butch Butler saying, let's just pass this already, right? Because it was such a little detail, but it was so important because we want our community to look good, right? I mean, look at everything that you're doing as a whole. The apartment buildings that are going up, you want the colors to look good, you want the landscaping. I remember the cemetery needing new bushes and a fence in that area because we wanted our community to look good. This is in the middle of town, and I drive by it a lot, and I understand. I mean, you're very hardworking, just like the rest of us, and I get that. I drive by it all the time, and there were up to 30 junk cars, and I think we can call them junk cars because they're all in accidents in the back, and according to that of the regulation, there wasn't supposed to be any back there. And then up to 5 cars up for sale, and that was, but that, I mean, is here nor there, but how many times, so if the fence goes up, how are we to know how many cars, if it was 5 cars that are supposed to be in the fenced area, how many of the complaints that you received? You said that there were complaints earlier. I think you had mentioned that. do we need to be regulated by complaints for that to be checked on? I remember years ago, there used to be a house with a fence around it, kind of around by the cemetery area, and they were asked to take down that fence because it was such an eyesore. Fred, do you remember that? And do you remember the fact that there were so many other things inside that fence that they found? And not only that, but critters. We had, I mean, there was a mice issue, there were so many different elements that go with it. I guess for myself, to what point will it be regulated? And are we regulating it based on complaints from the community? To what level do we want our town to look good? And this is right in the center of town. It's a block from our little, stoplight area. When do we stop, or when do we continue keeping our town as a small community, but yet large community, because look how fast we're growing. So I guess those are my concerns. Not only do I work in this community, I have lived in this community for a really long time. I've come to your board before, I've asked, and with permits because of my business, my signs, so on and so forth, and I guess I would love to continue to see it look good. Thank you.
Thanks, Cynthia. All right, Warren, you're at 445 Connie Street, so we're in the
Correct.
Durham area.
Warren Hilmer, 445 Connie Street. I will echo the themes that you have just heard, so I'll try not to be overly redundant. I too am an extremely strong supporter of small business. I believe small business is absolutely critical to this community, and it's certainly critical to the lifeblood beyond as well. That being said, I think the fit with that small business or that enterprise with the surrounding area, residential, retail, small commercial, is absolutely critical, and it's dependent upon the local regulation system to help maintain that balance and fit with what we have with the community that it's attempting to grow. My concern is that based on the conditional use permit that was put in place in 2015, that was not adhered to. I can't remember when 5 vehicles were on that piece of property. It also talked about things such as storing on unpaved area. That was not allowed. Short-term storage for immediate turnaround and repair and out the door, limited. That has not been enforced. I think there's some critical things that have to be taken a look at before an expanded use. I don't know what good it did to have a conditional use permit when that was apparently not even enforced. So evidently, I don't know what the answer to that is. But my concern would be that you seriously look at the fit of what the small business enterprise is and how it fits in the greater good of our community. I am reluctant to use the term salvage business, but with the amount of inoperable and damaged vehicles that are stored there, it's almost as if we're looking to approve a salvage business operation in the middle of a downtown area. And I don't think that would be conducive to our greater community. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Warren. All right, questions from the commission? That's all we have for public.
You're closing.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. If there's no other public comment, then we'll close the public hearing and we'll hear from the commission.
I have a few questions, Aaron. Sorry, that's fine. So, what are we approving? So, right, there's the conditional use permit, is the permit, but whatever we're going to call this is the permit, this is the building. it looks like the request is approval of the fence line, which is fine. And again, it's sort of a concept. You have some conditions, I think, this drawing shows, access from the side street, and I think in your text, you're saying, no, we can't do that. Am I reading that correct?
Yeah, I noticed that that's incorrect. There's no access to a business from a residential street. That driveway is, if you look at the map, actually across from another commercial business. So I think you could consider at least that first section up to that driveway to be the commercial street. So I think the access from the side is fine. I think when they do enclose the northern part of that parking lot, we probably want a gate in there too, so you're just moving back and forth and not going around.
So we should make sure that that's clear, right, in the document first of all. So I guess then the other thing is, as far as the permit, it's no more than, 5 cars for sale on the property. That was what the permit was originally issued to. The front line there, that's why I was asking kind of where are you talking about for the cars for sale? I mean, what's your guess of the number there? I mean, is what are we proving striking that requirement and creating a new limit? And we should define that limit? Because the current website shows like 64 cars, right? So that's certainly more than the frontage of that street. So what
Yeah.
are we approving? Or what is the request here?
So that front row probably holds about 8 or 9. I think envision when they repair that lot, there would be additional landscaping kind of behind that area to block any cars behind that and kind of isolate that sales area a little bit more and keep it more organized and obvious where it is, so it's not bleeding throughout the site.
So the current permit's for 5. And you're saying to take it to 12. Or 8.
However many
Sorry,
are
8.
in that
You're saying
front,
take it
yeah,
to
8 or 9, whatever fits.
8,
in the
9.
front section.
So what about the other 55 plus cars?
So
So how are we dealing with that with the permit? Because that's not really addressed in here. And again, the fence line, I think I'm going to echo there everyone else. I'm going to give you a hard time, but small business, I mean, when you came here last time, we're like, good job coming in here, trying to get ahead of the issues, coming in and creating space. I think we're all for that, and we're all for business expansion, but we're also like, hey, we had these guidelines they need to adhere to, and we're not there, so that's why I'm kind of grilling. That's my purpose here. So, go ahead. I mean, okay, now we're up to 8 cars, and you got 64.
So, as far as what's on the website, I know that there's, sorry, excuse me. There's vehicles that are sold on there too. I know some of them are marked as sold. There's not 64 that are ready for sale right now. So as they sell, then they get marked sold on as far as the website goes. But there's probably 30 or 40 cars that are on the website that are for sale.
Okay.
Are those all on the lot currently?
Those are cars that are either at the auction, coming to the lot, or like John and I had talked about previously, there's this balance between having cars ready and then having cars coming in to get ready. And as we see our business grow, that's the balance that we're trying to figure out, and that's why we thought the back lot would be a good resolution to be able to put those cars that are getting ready or that come in from the auction that are yet to be ready to rotate through. So.
How many cars does a 60 by 200 area hold in your projections?
So what we were told was roughly about, there's parking spots for, I think 40 cars? I think 40 cars.
Approximately 40 with the drive aisle.
Are you planning on striping that back there?
The back lot, no, because I don't think we would have any, it wouldn't be
Wouldn't be
customer parking.
public.
It would just be private.
I'm just for obviously putting things in their place. I didn't know if you were planning on striping here or not. I was just asking. 40?
When they redo the front, we'll want that straight. So.
Okay. I think you kind of brought up additional questions because for sale is a vague term. So if we say you can have 10 lots or 10 cars for sale up front, you could say 30 cars are sold and that doesn't fall under there. So it just kind of creates a vague comment for the conditional use. So is the back lot for sold cars, for salvage cars? What's the vision for that back there?
So the idea on the back lot, that's where vehicles that would be getting ready for sale would go. It's also where, we get, obviously, as being a used car dealer or a car dealer, you get trade-in vehicles, and then you have to wait for those to either get taken away to go to auction again, or to go to wherever their next resting point is. So that's kind of what we'd be using that back lot.
So what's your vision for the paved lot up front, then, outside of the street frontage?
So that the lot area, the plan would be then to be able to have that be a sales lot up in front. Is that what you're asking?
Well, that's fine if that's what it is, but then that goes back to what Alex's concern is, if it's not written up to be a sales lot right now, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think you would need customer parking if it's going to be a sales building. I think that would be in front of the building. I think you'd have your repair, customer parking along the repair building with, the handful of cars that are waiting to go in, and then you have the cars for sale up along the street. I think that it's going to account for that parking lot when you put landscaping in.
Right, okay. So that should be spelled out further, just so that's not unclear.
Yeah, and that'll come back again prior to them building it, that new building in the front lot.
Okay. And then privacy fence is kind of a vague term. What are we envisioning on that?
My thought was probably, I would assume probably a vinyl privacy fence, something that doesn't need constant staining or maintenance as far as that goes.
And it says new gate, is that like a sliding gate that closes the fence there? Or-
Yeah, to bring the cars through.
I know this isn't part of it, but any thoughts of fixing the windows on Ollie Street?
So we inherited the building in very rough shape, and we've been trying to do work to it. I mean, as funds have been coming in, we did a bunch of concrete work, it'd be about a year and a half ago in the front, where that whole little parking area right in front of the white building there, it's not there anymore. We turned that into grass, and so we're trying to get there. It's just we're trying to afford it as we can.
In steps,
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
So for this phased approach, then, if you were to do this, Aaron said you'd start as soon as you could. When would you see the next phases? In other words, phase one is get these fencing structure, privacy fence in there, get some landscaping around that, make it look, much nicer than it currently is, paved, obviously. And then phase two, when would that begin? If again,
Phase-
finances are tight,
Sure.
wondering how
Phase-
that's going to be phased in. Are we going to wait another 2 years before that's done and before the front area is cleaned up, or is it all anticipated this year?
I would love for it to be all this year. It just depends on, we haven't had any bid quotes for building as far as the structure goes or anything like that yet. We've been in the building and had our business established long enough that we now, the bank that we have the loan for the building through is willing to extend us financing for the parking lot and the rest of the updates.
Aaron, just step back for a second. What's the process here? So we're a planning commission. We're gonna look through. We're gonna have a budget. Something will happen, and there's your concept plans clearly. And this happens before, right? So what's the process? We have a concept. It may be an 6 foot. It might be an 8 foot. It's approximately 60 by 200. Does this move to board? Does it stay in staff for
Go
final?
to the board, the final details of it would come to staff unless you want to see it again. So myself and MSA would be looking at stormwater issues, things like that.
Okay, just wanted to be clear, because, all right, now back into this specifically, I mean, because what I'm nervous is there's really no timing because of the sensitivity of this, right? So, the phase one, making sure that we get a parking lot, making sure that we get a privacy fence up to keep work in progress from affecting the neighbors, right?
It can be a condition to put
We put
some
it,
kind of deadline on phase one being done.
well, we're not good at holding accountable to the current permit, so I'm not sure how does that do anything, right? So that's the other section, is what are we actually also, I guess it's not, it doesn't really say, I'm missing it. That we're updating the conditional use permit, striking the 5 cars to 10 cars, I mean, we should define that, and what is the repercussions of having 30, 20 to 30 cars, we're over the limit. Is it, do we go to the ordinances and it's $500 fine by day, or is it per car, what are we proving here? Like, I'm still a little confused as to where we're at with all this. I'm not sure what if I made a motion, I don't even know what I'm motioning on. Other than the fence, that part's clear. We're good with that. But I'm having a struggle between what the permit is actually saying this property's for versus what it's actually being used for and what we're trying to update it to.
Ultimately, the plan commission board would have the right to pull the permit. There would be another hearing, and then they would not be able to operate that business in this place.
Because we know we're not adhering to the permit now, right? Are we acknowledging that? Is that more than 5 cars for sale?
I think
Right.
what he's getting at is what are we asking to amend? It's so vague and unclear that we don't even know what we're amending. So what are we amending?
These would be the conditions in the conditional use. You can make them more specific, add deadlines, that kind of thing.
I mean,
Right, like number 2,
Yeah, I was gonna say-
inoperable establishment fuel should not be stored on site except temporarily, right? And what we're struggling with, what is temporary, right? And so I think the initial intent was, it's a shop, I need engine work, whatever, plugs changed. Leave it there, it's there for 7 days, I don't know how long it takes to fix stuff. And then I get my car back, right? And since then, the business has evolved from, getting auctions, getting cars, rehabbing them, and putting them back into the community. We're recycling cars, great thing. We're not scrapping stuff, right? That takes longer, right? To acquire parts, it could be a month. That vehicle could be a donor vehicle, right? So it has slightly changed. And to the point of the community, what is the vision of that space? If it's new cars for sale, a couple of things on there, and helps the community out. Local kid gets his driver's license, goes down the street. That's awesome. But it's since evolved, and is this permit now in compliance with what we're asking for? It doesn't feel like it is, right? I don't know what temporary is, and now we're in this weird place where we're getting issues from residents and stuff that it's not defined anymore. We went from very specific 5 cars to that space in the front. We've got 8-foot wide parking spots, or are we making them 6-foot wide parking spots? We're just going to line them in there. And it's okay, and it's not, and again, I'm giving you a hard time because it's kind of a gig, but we live and die by these definitions. We live and die by the consistency of we want the signs to look different ways. So let's be consistent with what we're doing here. I don't know what temporary is,
I think it is whatever the plan commission wants it to be.
Well, then I would ask to go back and get it all defined.
Yeah, so you're
Clarify.
motioning on the table then and get it more clarified.
Yeah, I mean, which is kind of maybe that's what it's for discussion. Maybe that's really kind of where I want to go, because even the fence, if we're saying the first section of that street is business and not residential, which we have documents on where all our streets look, so that Bonnie Drive comes up, and right where that island is, it's business up till that island. Is it Bonnie?
Dolly.
No, Bonnie Drive. I'm talking where our old.
Ollie.
That's Ollie.
Now it's Ollie right there.
Yeah.
That's Ollie.
Ollie.
Bonnie, the old Public Works building,
Yes.
halfway up the street to the island is commercial.
Right.
So we define our roads. If that road is defined halfway through as business, then it'll fit that narrative. If we're saying that road is residential, that doesn't fit. That's an exception we're approving. Sets precedence, right? So I feel like that needs to be clarified.
You want to know what the line is?
Yeah.
Is what you're saying. Okay. My recollection is they've already appeared before us previously, and that they were instructed to give us a more detailed plan regarding the fencing, which they came up with to satisfy the complaints about all of the visible, less than stellar vehicles. And we, as a commission, instructed them, I believe, to work with staff to come up with a plan. So this might be two separate issues regarding the number of vehicles for sale, how many vehicles they can have on the lot, and then the fence.
I think you're right, and I appreciate that. You're always the voice of reason. Because we did ask for that, and I think we agree that this is the fence plan, and I'm not challenging really. What I'm also looking at is the permit sort of updates.
Right, but it's just like all of a sudden
Two
now
separate plans,
it's
yeah.
tied together. I mean,
Yeah.
I was a little surprised to see it come back like this.
Okay.
Just my recollection.
So we need parsed out, so what you're, we need clarity on temporary, we need number clarity. You know, how many vehicles do you anticipate rotating through in order to make it work for the 5, 8, whatever in front? How many are you working on at one time? What does that mean, that fenced in area? Because if the conditional use is for 20, you may not have to build it that big, and therefore don't build it that big. Right?
I think it's for protection for both sides. I mean, the for sale term is vague, and if it's sold, can it still be sitting up there, yes or no? I mean, none of that's spelled out, and this board has been in enough fights over fences, so I would like to see more clarification on the fence. I mean, just, let's be honest, we've had a number of fence problems, so I just think that the way that this is written, it's just too vague to be able to vote on it and say yes. I mean, I'm fine with tabling it, but
So if you table, what actions do we need then for them to come back with? We need conditional use sorted out.
I mean,
Fred's point, it's two separate
but
items.
what comes first? The conditional use permit for the number of vehicles they're allowed to have, or the fence? Because I'm pretty sure they can build a fence as long as it meets code.
Do we have any ordinances regarding auto sales?
Yeah, it's land use within the zoning ordinance.
Okay, so, but what, does that determine any of these things that we're discussing right now? Like car dealerships and what they can and can't?
No, these were additional to the conditional use permit based on the location.
And the conditional use permit at the time was just that they can have up to 5 vehicles for sale? That's the only condition?
No, there were other conditions that we looked at.
Because the problem that I'm thinking of is that even if we came up with a term for temporary, how do you enforce that? And you could have a temporary vehicle, a new one every week, every week. You could have 52 cars every week, so it's basically the same thing. What's the difference between 52 cars that can't operate or the same car for 52 weeks? I don't.
I think what you enforce is the number. It's pretty easy to figure out. Number for sale, number that are on the site. As simple as that.
I do like though that we are, I like that you want to fix the property up. I mean, I think that's great. It is a little run down right now, so I appreciate that, and I think that's something that's important. now, maybe it's kind of hard to imagine what it will look like. But I think we need to see that before we can go further too. Because right now it's just a big parking lot with a lot of cars. But I think a car dealership is important to a community too. And repairing vehicles is important because we all have cars, so.
We do a lot of local work. I mean, we do a lot of service work for people locally, and we do a lot of sales for people locally too.
And being right in the middle of the village is a great spot where everybody can go to as well.
John, on the basis of 38 years of these meetings and acquiring a certain expertise in fences that I didn't really want, one thing to keep in mind is that, Aaron is the planner, and in relation to the first speaker's comment or question, we are a complaint-driven system. I mean, we're not, Aaron isn't out in his enforcement mobile trying to find things that are not code compliant. And so, to some extent, we react to what the public says, and I think that we have to kind of keep that in mind, that it is a separate issue. It's something we brought up before, and it's an issue of how much money does the village want to spend on enforcement, and then you get into this whole question of, are you being business friendly or are you being citizen friendly by having the enforcement?
I guess to answer that question, I would say that you would work on getting the criteria down on the conditional use permit before you do anything else moving forward. I mean, we're not building a fence for 3 or 4 months anyway with weather, so that gives you 3 to 4 months to tighten up both sides of what you're looking for on business and for on our side.
I think it's fair to ask how many spots they intend to have designated for sales, how many they intend to have set aside for customers. And personally, I'd like to know what the fence is gonna look like. It's a little vague right now.
That's fine. For sale, sold, customer parking, and fixed vehicles, all of those spelled out a little bit more detail.
And then a sample of the fencing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because, I mean, that's gonna go a long way towards, what the citizens might wanna see that live in that area. There's a big difference between a vinyl fence and a wood fence, or
And
cemetery chain link fence, or,
All right, then is there a motion to table this with the action to sort all those things out, come back to the commission?
I'll make that motion, and part of that motion, I just want clarity as to what we're voting on. I mean, the one very specific item, keep it focused to the fence. And then the second item will be the conditional use permit. And in that conditional use permit, kind of the least point though, yeah, we are kind of hard to deal with enforcement, and the ordinances do account for enforcement. And that's how we hold our neighbors available, or accountable. We have the weed ordinance guy, and he goes out and mows, and then the person gets a bill, so.
But I think what Lee's saying, we don't have that for this.
Right.
We don't have an inspector.
No, we don't. For this.
For any of our
For
conditional use
for one-
permits?
Right, because, I mean, over the course of
It's staff.
50 years.
Well, it'll be
there's a lot
staff,
of-
right? It's staff. Staff gets a complaint,
Oh, right, but I'm saying we're not out there every, because.
No, yeah, you're not looking for work, no, I get that, right, that's what Lee's saying,
Okay.
but when there's a complaint, you
Yeah,
should
so-
do your due diligence and
Correct, yeah.
and help the business. So it's
Right.
not really, hey, you're in violation, let's help you
Yeah.
fix this, which I think is the process here, which I like,
Well, that's,
So-
in my opinion, that's how this started.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So part of your motion would be also in that conditional uses to clarify, as both Fred and Kyle said, the number of vehicles for sale, number of vehicles for parking for customers, and the number of vehicles you're gonna be rotating through. Yes?
Correct, including that, and right, what is the, with the idea of adding the detail as to what this property is actually going to be used for.
Just wanna make sure
So
that
that we have that, right, so it's that, not limited to those items, right? There's other things that come up, whatever other things happen.
John, from a procedure point of view,
I have to
suggest-
spell it out.
let me suggest that, well, if we just table, then there's really no direction. So if Alex could, for example, say, these are the things that I want to see happen, or this is the information that I want back, and then once we've established all that, then we make a motion to table, because really a motion to table is a motion to table and nothing else.
Okay, that's what I was trying to get at.
Yeah.
Okay. The clarification, conditional use.
Do you think, if there were spots in the blacktop, like lines, that would help too, rather than packing just anything in there without lines?
That's
I mean,
what I
that
was
might be a
asking for.
definition.
Behind the
Keeping it
fence?
orderly, but.
Well, it might, but it'd still be open during the day, it's not, it's gonna be closed off to the
Well,
public.
it's gonna have,
Is it easier to say just a total number of cars in general and not specify for sale, sold, sold,
Total number of cars on the
customer
Property.
parking, whatever? I mean, I'm assuming you're envisioning sold cars and cars to be fixed up back here and then, because you said that, and then your for sale cars up here and your customer parking there. So, I don't know, is it just easier to say?
but by code, don't they have to have so many spots for customers?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
you know, we don't wanna be enforcing that they have a for sale, a car for sale in a customer designated parking.
No, that's not, I guess that's not what I was saying, but if you want, okay, fine, you have your customer
But if-
parking of
okay.
11 or whatever, and then, does it really matter on if it's for sale sold, or to be sold, or to go to auction, or to?
It doesn't matter to me, but it seems like it might matter to some other people.
Well, and from what you can see from the street too, I guess, what's visible, we don't necessarily want, vehicles that are in disarray to
Well,
be
that
out
was
front.
why they thought they were building the fence, was to put those behind
That's-
the fence.
That's our goal with the fence, is
Right.
to just
Right.
try and organize everything. And the property, the way that we received it, it doesn't flow well for what we're trying to do, and this was our best solution to try and make it fit well with the community, fit well with what we're doing, and with how we're trying to grow. I mean, that's the other side of it, is, the business, whether we want it to or not, is kind of growing. It's just, whether it be word of mouth or the following that we've got, it's turning into more than what we even thought it was going to be. So, it's been fun. It's been neat to see. But I think that this would help us with how quickly it did grow, especially this last year. This would give us some structure to be able to get things figured out.
So, just put words before we, because Lee asked to be a little more specific. So, if it's correct, it would be, I would propose a motion to table with two specific items, would be to provide fence clarity as to what the, and then also provide clarity around the car count issue for sale, donor vehicles versus completely scrap junk versus in progress workflow, and then what that car count, how that car count relates to the conditional use permit and how the conditional use permit is updating. Lee, does that?
I think from a staff point of view, all we're asking for is exactly what the plan commission wants, because then, it's 30 days or whatever until we deal with this again. So if you can give more direction, that's probably best.
Okay.
I think that's pretty clear.
I think I can work with it.
more for that? All right, so then I'll make that motion to table.
All right.
Looking for the fence clarity, car count clarity, and provide clarity around updates around the conditional use permit. Add one left, and enforcement.
Kyle, second that.
Is-
Sorry. I added.
Till when? Till the next meeting, or is that when you're tabling it to?
Kids tabled in.
As soon as we're ready to bring it back,
Yeah.
right?
we can take it off the table.
Yeah, then it'll come back.
But what did you add to that?
I snuck in there enforcement. You know, how does the conditional use permit be enforced? And that could be just a talking point, I guess, with staff. But I'd like clarity around that.
Do you think you get those
Sorry.
tests done by next meeting?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a separate issue. 'Cause
Okay.
Why, I don't think you should tie it specifically to this.
Okay,
That, to me, that's a general thing.
Yes.
sorry.
Because it could apply to any.
Fine, I'll amend my motion and strike that last part for the, Enforcement.
All right, I'll second that.
Well, so isn't a table the motion just to table that with all?
Yeah,
the
but
other
That's
stuff?
why I wanted to clarify.
Right,
what-
right, clarity,
what
but
that
it's
is.
just table the motion,
That's fine.
basically, right? Am I right?
Motion and second. Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstained? Motion carries. All right. Item 8 is a,
John, could I just say something? Mr. Ferguson, what you'll need to do is stay in contact with Aaron, and he'll be responsible for telling the plan commission whether he has the information that he needs to bring this back to the plan commission.
This is Gerard.
Yep.
John's not here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
all right, item 8 is a public hearing. We're going to open up, here's another public hearing, opportunity for public to provide input, a request from Gray Wolf for approval of general development plan for a hotel located on parcel 0711-041-2120-1 in the Commerce Park. So again, same kind of litany. We'll have Gray Wolf come up along with staff, provide some clarity there. We don't have anybody right now that is up to speak, but maybe they will after hearing from you guys.
Right, this is Todd Rizzo from Gray Wolf. Here to tell us a little bit more about how we got here, why the site is the way it is, and all that good stuff. Just
Yeah, you
Which
can
one you
talk
want to
about-
start with?
Yeah, that's fine. Again, my name is Todd Rizzo. I'm Senior Vice President at Gray Wolf Partners. We're the applicant for the PUD GDP application for the proposed hotel project. And for those of you that are not familiar with Gray Wolf is a full-service real estate company that manages and develops real estate in all categories. Gray Wolf has its executive offices here in Cottage Grove. They were relocated here late last year. They were actually right on Landmark Drive, just north of the proposed project. We have our headquarter building in Milwaukee, and Joe Wagner, who is the CEO, owner of Gray Wolf, actually is a Cottage Grove resident as well. So just some background on that. So tonight we're requesting your approval of our PUD request so that we can develop, own, and operate an 82-room Comfort Suites branded hotel on a vacant land parcel that's right on Landmark Drive. I know a lot of this information is in your package. So the vacant land parcel is actually owned by Gray Wolf Partners as well. And Gray Wolf Partners is actually the owner of the retail building just north of the proposed project. And as a side note, the owner of Gray Wolf is actually a partner in the BB Jack's restaurant that just recently opened in that building to the north of the proposed project. Can it come up one at a time, or does it stay up as a whole? There. So that's the location of the project, as most of you are aware. And then here's a site plan for the project. The building is orientated where the front of the hotel faces to the south, and that's where the main entrance would be. It didn't fit, nor did we think it was the right way to establish it with an entry facing Landmark Drive. It would just be too congested. And we think the way the parking's laid out, it gives it just a better entry for the guest, just a better dispersed parking area. There's 90-plus parking stalls on the site to serve the hotel. As part of the site plan development, we're not needing any additional curb cuts for the project. They'll be utilizing the existing ones that are in place right now. And then, the conceptual designs that we've laid out are actually brand new designs for Choice Hotel. They're rebranding their hotel chain. And if this project gets approved, this will probably be the first new Comfort Suites in the entire country, which we're pretty excited about. The materials on that building are a mix of brick, architectural metal, and stucco. In the renderings that you have, the charcoal color, as we see it right now, is the brick. The gray color would be the architectural panel. It's almost similar to what you see on the Summit Credit Union facility. And the white, there'd be a little bit of white metal panel that wraps around to the right of this, on the screen. And then most of the other white would be a stucco ephes material. So this is the elevation that faces south. That's an angled elevation facing Landmark Drive. This is the north elevation that would face the BB Jacks. And that would be the elevation facing Highway N. The hotel itself would be a suites-only hotel. Right now, we're planning to have 44 king suites and 38 double queen suites. In the interior of the hotel, there'd be a conference meeting room, a fitness room, an indoor pool, and then all guests would have breakfast available for them in the morning. It's not part of this application, but the goal long-term is to create a common area between the BB Jacks and the hotel that would, have some patio, fire pits, and just be an amenity for the guests of the hotel, but also an additional amenity for the BB Jacks restaurant. So that is something that we envision evolving over time, and that would come in under another application, but it would be sort of integrated.
How close is the hotel to BB Jacks? I'm just curious how big this common area is going to be, because from these drawings, it looks like it's practically
I don't know if I have, it's somewhere between 25 and 27 feet, if I remember correctly.
24 or 25 in my head.
Is that what it was?
And are those rooms on that floor facing BB Jacks?
Yes, there's rooms on both.
With windows, I assume, or a sliding door or something?
There's windows, there's no doors or balconies that would lead out to there. The first floor of the hotel is all common elements, so there's no windows on that first floor. Go back to that. And that's just a conceptual.
Okay.
But the first floor, there's 4 doors planned right now. One is going back into the laundry guest area. There's a mechanical room. There's one planned as a corridor, as a connection to that area, and then there's one door for a pool equipment room. And there's a couple windows in the pool area.
Sure.
But for the most part, the guests on the levels 2 through 5 would kind of be looking at the roof, which.
But they would be above the common area. I was just thinking about noise and things like that.
Yeah. That wouldn't be something where it'd be an all-night. The BB Jack's restaurant is really meant to be more of a family place and not a bar nightclub type of place. So I think whatever happens out there, it'll be tasteful and not distract the guests that are staying there. So that's sort of a high-level overview. I know the application we provided, I think, provides a lot more detail, but we're very excited about this project. We spent some time with Matt and Aaron. I mean, it's been about a year effort of us researching this project and trying to find the right layout, the right brand to it attached to this project. And we think, just talking to the businesses in the area and learning more about this, there is a demand that for a hotel, and I think a lot of the residents, the recreational facilities in the area and the businesses are really looking forward to this, so we're excited.
This isn't part of it, but things to look into, charging station for hotel guests would be something to look into for that. And then public pool passes, because there's lack of water stuff, so I know a lot of hotels like charge $5 for families to come in and use the pool. It just might be something to look into with Comfort Suites to see if that's allowed.
Yeah, we were going to offer the conference meeting room in there to outside guests as well. So
Okay.
I know, like Johnson Health across the street, and there's been some communication that might be valuable in the community in the area.
Yeah, I know they've been screaming for a water feature in this area for a long time, so I could go over really well off of that. And then is the parking lot having any additional lighting or anything? I didn't see that in the plans.
That would be part of the next application, the PIP. It wasn't required as part of this general development plan.
Yeah,
But
perfect.
But there will be supplemental lighting and then some accent lighting on the building, but nothing that would, flow off into the neighboring properties. It would be tastefully done.
What about signage? Is there plans for, lack of a better word, freestanding sign, or is it all going to be on the structure itself?
Yeah, that is an item that's required to be more defined, I think, in the next level of information. But on some of the renderings, we've shown a few ideas of kind of what we envision. And right now, we do not have a monument sign planned. There may be a requirement with the franchise that we haven't reviewed yet, but on the next round, if there is a requirement, we would, really, if we did do it, it would probably go in this island or maybe like right over here. There's not a great place for it on this site. Those are pretty beefy signs to some extent. And their new prototype is a little different than the signage on here, because it's so new that they haven't even rolled it out. But this is the actual prototype plan from the Choice Hotel International Company. And so they have more signage on the building and some different elements. So we don't even know if a monument's required. So we took, and our drawings aren't fully articulated with all the detail yet. They're general, but this shows a little bit more of some of the details that would come out that aren't shown in ours, little reveals and things like that. But so we took this plan, which is their vision, and adapted it to our site. This hotel probably is, it's bigger in length, so that might be 100 to 120 rooms. Our site, we're doing 80, so there's a few things that were scrunched a little bit. So right now on this submittal, we're showing two wall signage elements. The only thing we're considering is maybe something back here on the corner that would be visible from the freeway, driving
I was just going to ask.
west, if we could make that work. We haven't studied that enough yet to see if that's, so do we take one on this side and put it on the other side and just do a small one above the canopy? So that's something, if we make progress, we'll work on that for the next submittal.
I'm sure Choice will have some opinions on that as well, since
since this is one of the
Yeah,
later.
they have very defined,
Yeah, absolutely.
not only on the exterior, but the interior.
Mhm. Okay.
How many parking stalls was there, 92?
There's, I think there's 90 precisely, but the three properties in the area, the Arby's, the Quick Trip, and this property, there's certain shared parking agreements that were put in place by the prior owner, Gadorzi. And so Arby's gets to use a couple of ours, we get to use some of theirs, and Quick Trip. So I think we get to about 98 with that arrangement. And then we own the building to the north, so if there's ever a need, I think there's enough there. There's kind of a overlap. The demand for the hotel is more at the night, and so we think there'll be some extra there if we ever need it to the north.
Thank you.
So the existing lot, for lack of a better word, between the Gadorzi building and Quick Trip is going to stay?
The lot between BBC.
Well, kind of like Quick Trip and Arby's and then your other building. It's going to stay. There's a lot there now. That's what's shared, correct?
I mean, this
No, the project we're proposing is on the vacant land between Quick Trip, Arby's, and the BB Jack Retail.
Right, but what's happening to the parking lot? Is that being tore up?
No,
There's parking there now. I'm part of
correct.
that.
Yeah, the only thing that, yeah,
In the,
Yeah, I can actually do a market explain.
existing conditions?
yeah, so this is an existing condition right here, and then there's like
yeah,
a,
that's right there,
there's this section that goes right here like that where there's,
Yeah.
and so there's actually like there's a curb here. So we're blowing up that curb and just doing a double row parking. So this parking exists, but it's actually on our property. So somehow, some way that got developed as part of the shared parking arrangement. We're just kind of cleaning it up and blending it all in, but we're not changing anything of it, just a small portion.
The rest of that's grass. Fairly significant.
Right, but what about the lot to the right of the grass?
between the front of the hotel and Landmark.
It's getting redeveloped.
Yeah, right there. And yes, right
This
there.
one?
Right, no, that side.
So
You're on
they're
the
already
side to the right.
non-landmark, the site condition, current condition, map, right?
She's got an actual aerial view.
Yeah.
Is that in our packet?
I mean, this lot's being rebuilt because it's being shifted further east.
So this is all one lot, I'm not sure I'm following what you're saying.
There's existing parking on this.
Oh, yes, I forgot about that, yes.
That's what I'm asking. Is that
I'm sorry, wrong day. Yeah, so there is a row of parking right there.
Yes, that.
We're tweaking it a little
Yeah,
bit.
it looks like they did.
We're
that.
just tweaking it a little bit, pushing it out a few feet.
But that's included in your 90 spots.
Yes.
Okay.
And those were developed, nobody has rights to those. Those got developed by another owner and another life, don't know why. But nobody has rights to those except for us.
Okay.
So Johnson Health has been using those.
A lot of
everybody's been using
them,
them.
but, okay, I get it.
So, yeah, I'm sorry, I misunderstood what you're saying. So those are part of this project and only for this project.
Okay.
And then the last thing I forgot to mention, we did hold a neighborhood open house last evening for all the residents around the project, and we had average turnout and spoke to a lot of those folks. There was only one residential couple that showed up. Most of them were businesses in the area.
Which is
I don't
pretty
think any of them are here tonight.
Where is the sidewalk on N? Or by N? So it's right next to the street? Is that right?
We're not developing that, that's an existing condition.
It's okay, so whatever is existing
It's
is,
set back
okay,
that far, too.
Yeah,
okay. I just
That'll-
wanted to-
next year that'll be the bike path.
Right. Well,
Next year.
Yeah.
When it was built.
right. Okay. Just wanted to verify that. then so the proposed building is 5 stories, while the PO zoning allows a maximum of 4. And with Summit, did that get a condition there, an
Summit
exception?
did the same process as a planned unit development, so that was the same two-step approval process.
So I think that's an important thing to discuss, is that the exceptions are, that's the purpose of a planned unit development zoning. So they're doing a rezoned using planned unit development, and that type of zoning in our code allows for the developer to work with the plan commission and the board on agreeing on exceptions, but those exceptions, whatever they may be, are allowed within that district. So it's just looking at if they were applying for planned office zoning, these are the types of things that would not fit. That would be the 4-story versus 5-story. But it does work in the instance of planned unit development, which is similar to Cottage Grove Commons or Summit Credit Union. So usually with that, the benefit the village receives with these exceptions is more tax bases. You're getting higher quality, larger development, and it would be hard to write code in a smaller village that would be able to foresee something like this hotel or Summit or Cottage Grove Commons. It'd be hard to write code that specific, so this allows the flexibility for the plan commission.
This use and this level of architecture is supported in the comp plan. There's a number of policies that were listed in the staff report that this project would meet, so it is still meeting the comp plan. There's not exceptions there.
And Aaron, you have 2 conditions in here too, right? Sidewalk and
Yeah.
exterior material.
Obviously, we'll see a second submittal for the plan, for the precise implementation plan. We'll have a lot more detail that we'll get into, but at this point, a little bit of a concern about the parking right adjacent to the sidewalk on Landmark, any vehicle overhangs. I think we either want curb stops to keep the vehicles from extending into the sidewalk, or make that sidewalk 6 feet instead of 5. Then material samples aren't always required, but I think it would be a good idea to have those for the next meeting. And I know MSA took a look at this as well, and I guess this is our opportunity to introduce Kevin Lord, who's going to be taking over for Mike Maloney as the village engineer from MSA. And Kevin, if you want to touch on some of your items there.
We did take a look at it, and I agree with Aaron. We had a few comments that are more, will be addressed at the next level, as far as sidewalks and some elevations and just location of trees, with some of the existing features and everything. I guess the one thing, and I think Todd addressed this a little bit, and I think we can work with him on it, is on the north side of the building, you kind of said it's going to be a shared area there, and I realize you guys own them both currently and everything. When I looked at them in Access Dane, there were 2 different LLCs or something like that, I thought. So, our concern is if they're 2 separate parcels, if one ever gets sold in the future, whether we'd want to do an easement or something, if they're going to be a shared area of some sort, just to avoid issues in the future, I guess, was the main thing.
I think that'd be covered.
Yeah, I think that's something we still haven't fully, there may even be some requirements under the franchise rules in terms of how the hotel, interfaces with that area. I know at one point when we were talking to Choice, we talked about making some type of connection, actually a covered kind of pathway from the hotel into the restaurant, and they said, no, we need separation. So I think there's just a little more homework we need to do on what we're going to do back there and what we can do and how that all plays together. But I agree that, it will be under 2 separate LLCs, but it's under common majority ownership, amongst. So I think we'll have more information as we move forward, but we understand that there's some utilities that run through there. I think it's storm, and that we need to be sensitive to that. We're not going to put a bunch of fancy improvements here, and then all of a sudden somebody's got to bust it up to go get at some utilities.
Anybody register to speak on this?
No. what we'll do now then, nobody registered to speak on this particular item, so then we will close the public hearing. The next item is discuss and consider the request from Gray Wolf for approval for a general development plan, a hotel located on this parcel 0711-041-2120-1 in the Commerce Park.
I'll motion to approve subject to the staff conditions 1 and 2 from our packet.
And the engineering conditions as well.
What was that?
MSA's conditions as well.
Yeah, yep, and MSA's.
Yeah, because they do have some in here too.
Second.
It's motion and second. Any further discussion?
Not discussion, but when you're talking about doing more homework, you're right, there's a lot of cross easements in that area, and so you may want to just diagram those out in some fashion, and, maybe you've got what you need, or maybe you don't.
Yeah, we went through that. There's actually, there's some utility easements that run diagonally from Landmark towards RVs, and so.
And as part of the previous partnership, there were some easements, and so,
Yeah, we did we kind of went through that already, but
Very
if we need to provide
just
that to
tie
your
down
staff.
exactly what it was.
Okay, any other discussion? Having heard then, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries.
Thanks, Todd.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to item 10. We'll open another public hearing this evening. This one is the opportunity for the public to provide input regarding requests from Dendron's Distilling for a conditional use permit for an outdoor seating area at their facility located at 300 Progress Drive. Aaron, you keep sitting.
Got the
Blueberry's name tag.
sir from distillery as well. I can tell us a little bit about what they're working on here, but they have a conditional use permit, you'll recall, for the tasting room based on the size of it. That was a whole thing we went through last year. Now they're looking at doing an outdoor component to the business as well. You can tell us a little bit.
Sure.
about that.
Hi, everybody. How are you guys?
Good.
So we had, at our last session here, talked about future growth plans of the business and said we would come back for the next set of approvals when that came. And here we are. So we have, as part of, so we occupy, or we lease 2 of the units at 300 Progress Drive, so E and F. F is currently where our tasting room is, and E wraps around in an L shape, and that's our production space. As part of Unit E, there's also an outdoor fenced area, and if individuals might recall, this was previously a repo business. E was the indoor management of items, and outdoors there is a fenced area that is 11 to 12,000 square feet. So it's a quite large outdoor area. The drawing, the plan view drawing you're looking at here is to scale. So you can kind of see over here is, this is if you're looking from above, this is our tasting room and then our production space. So this is the outdoor fence space as it is fenced today. And so we would like to ultimately gain your approval and feedback on improving that area into an outdoor green space, sort of patio that we could utilize for events and further entertainment and have additional seating capacity with that. And so this is the full, if we do it all at once, this is the full plan as outlined. So there's bathrooms, a service bar, a stage, a kids play area, and then lots of open empty space for like yard games and grass, picnic tables.
I'm not as good at drawing as the other guys.
So yes, it's kind of the general highlight.
Okay.
I'd love to answer any questions that anybody has.
So, I'm clear, you're adding outdoor, or is there more, with this drawing, you're adding outdoor bathrooms?
Yeah.
That's the red?
Yep.
That's the red.
Okay, that's the red, okay. Got it. Okay.
Staff then, comment there, that might answer some
Yep.
commission
Yeah,
questions.
so it's the use that requires the conditional use permit, the outdoor entertainment as an accessory use. We'd recommend approval of that with a few conditions. There's some idea of having music out there. If that's amplified, we have an amplified sound permit. Whether we could do that on a seasonal basis or if that's always event by event.
I think we should do it, and we just have to have the dates
Yeah,
on.
so if it was like
John,
every Friday night or something,
Should we
just
close the
establish
public
that.
hearing?
Technically, the public hearing can go on until all this is done, and then we can close it at the point of doing that. Or we can close it now, it doesn't matter.
Well, he's still presenting information if some random public person wants to talk. I don't know. Just from, our guidance left. He retired. Look at his back.
Well,
that's
Okay, that's fine. I think there was some talk of repainting the parking, restriping the parking lot to the south here. I think we'd just like to see that layout before you actually do it to make sure it conforms with the ordinances. There would be probably a minor land disturbance permit for the engineer, I think. We had talked about before, you're kind of looking for this approval to start fundraising, and then there might be another level of design that goes into, how this actually lays out. So I think when that next level is in place, we want to touch base with the engineer again, make sure.
Would that require another permit process like we're doing today, or just offline discussions?
Yeah, I think that would qualify as a minor site plan, so that would be just staff.
Okay, sounds good, certainly. I email Aaron whenever I have questions. So.
Me too. So currently, inside the fenced area is gravel or pavement or?
Right now, it's
grass?
a gravel. We'd like to plant some grass at some point, just so it looks a little nicer. But yeah, it's mostly gravel right now. There's grass out on, just outside of the fence right here, and then the parking lot is there as well. The size of the parking lot, as it sits right now, I mean, I looked at like how much parking can fit in there. You can fit 3 rows of parking. The way it sits now, if the parking lot were to go to the fence, you can fit 4. So that's something we'd look at down the road, but we don't have any plans of like increasing the parking lot size right now.
So the bar that's outside, are you going to have some way to connect it to the inside bar currently?
So there's a bar right here on the inside. The bar outside would be completely standalone, but there is a door to get from inside to outside through the tasting room space that we would need to add, and that's just so that guests can go in and out, especially if it's hot outside, and people to be able to go into an air-conditioned space.
So the outdoor bar would be enclosed?
Yes, I do want to call out that this bar is just intended to be a service bar. It's not a bar where you would come sit at, like our indoor one. Because of the size of the outdoor space, some efficiency operating plans there, it would just be like a come up and order and take away and then go sit in the patio space. So it would be a fully enclosed, lockable building because we would have, full appliances, et cetera, out there. So we would have to lock everything up per our requirements anyways.
Are you planning on just being summer then, or like from like May 1st to September 1st, or like do you have a set?
We don't have set dates, but it would just be when weather permits. So like nothing in the winter or when it's like super cold.
Not like now?
I don't want to be outside right now.
But this would not modify our intended and current use of the indoor space. This would just be an additional, in the air, in this region, there's patio spaces and businesses draw a lot of people with that, and it's a huge benefit to, I think, even just a place for people to spend time with family and casually hang out, so
That's one
we
thing
would want to offer that.
That's one thing we as a business, I mean, even if you come into our tasting room right now, we have high chairs, like we really want a place where families can come and spend time together and it is a drinking establishment, but at the same time, we want it to be family friendly.
What's the capacity of the outdoor area?
That's dictated by the village, so we didn't pick our capacity for
Sorry.
inside. That was done.
Do we know what that number is?
Yeah, it'd be state code.
Yeah, I mean, it's
So what is
all, it totally depends on the
Building
size of the
structure.
stage, it's a square footage per person requirement that's entirely dependent on what you have for furniture outside. It's like 15 square foot per person or something. But they subtract off, so if I have 50 picnic tables versus 20, it's gonna totally change my seating capacity.
Well, I guess I'd like to know that, because I'd like to know if we're approving something that's gonna have 500 people or 1,000.
I think the max that it could be based on the square footage is something around 300 to 350. That's the absolute max if you just,
Thank you.
And there's no residential around you at all, so you gotta go in. It's a
And
nice big
even
forest.
still, we wanted to be, with the sound considerations, we were deliberate in planning our location and facing of the stage so that even ambient sound would carry, like even to the north, there are more neighborhoods, even though there's a large wooded area and additional industrial. Between us and any homes, we still wanted to, we took that extra step and faced everything south towards the railroad tracks. And
Aaron, do you have a satellite view you can put up so I can reference what it looks like? And I think the area is currently fenced, right?
yes.
yeah,
And Aaron, when the engineers look at all this for egress, I'm guessing there's gonna have to be additional emergency exit egresses put in. Is that part of engineering review for that space?
Yeah, I think that's that next level of detail.
Okay. And so
So instead of cars, it'd be people there.
instead of cars,
This area is what we're talking
so what section, like, is your map, your sketch, you don't have that whole.
Our building, our portion of the building is from here.
Got it.
over,
All right. Yep.
And then this is our outdoor space. And then actually all of these, the building, the units that are in this section of the building.
Yep.
All face over here, so most of them use most of this parking. The business in this unit uses a couple spots right here, but the majority of this parking is all for our 2 units.
Okay.
and then it's all, the whole building is one owner, so, and they all keep standard hours that ours do not conflict, so we can utilize that front parking lot as overflow parking as well. And in addition, there's street parking that's all open too, so.
When you get, when you do have bands, does each one have to go through a noise permit? Do you know, Aaron?
That's what I was asking Lisa before. It sounds like we could do it kind of seasonally, like if it's gonna be every Thursday night or Friday night or whatever it is, that could be established in one permit for the
One
season.
That would kind of define the duration of that area then probably too as well.
That would come to the board as a separate issue.
All right, I will move to close the public hearing then, and then we can move to discuss and consider the request from Henry Distillery for conditional use permit for the outdoor seating area at their facility at 300 Progress Drive. So, commission members have any other questions?
I'll motion to approve with conditions as set forth by staff.
It's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second, any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Item 12 is discuss and consider a request from North Grove School District for a site plan amendment for approximately 1,500 square feet addition to Glacial Drumlin Middle School cafeteria located at 801 Damascus Trail.
This is Clay and Schramm from Epstein Architects, working on the project on behalf of the school district. And this will stay here again, so I can do stuff here.
Should have moved a more comfy chair for you, Aaron.
That keeps him on his toes. Keeps him awake.
Ask Clay if you want to
Oh,
walk
sure.
through what they're
Yeah,
looking at.
absolutely. I'm McLean Schramm, one of the architects working on the Glacial Drumlin project. What I am presenting to you today is an addition that the district would like to add to their existing cafeteria. And the district wants to add this, expand their cafeteria for two reasons. First reason being to expand the servery of the kitchen. Currently, they have 2 serving lines, and they're struggling a little bit to get the students through quickly enough so that they, the last ones through, still have some time to eat lunch. So as part of this addition, we're going to be adding 2 serving lines to expedite the process so that they can have more time eating their lunch. The second reason for the addition is, thanks. So
So you can see the 2 serving lines kind of parallel.
Yeah.
Right?
So these 2 serving lines are the existing serving lines. These 2 are the ones that we're adding in the addition portion. So currently the cafeteria follows this curve with a glass curtain wall. So this area would be the addition. And then the second reason the districts would like to have the addition is to expand the square footage of the cafeteria in order to create a more functional cafeteria. The additional square footage will allow more square foot per student, more flexibility in the seating arrangement, and the flexible furniture itself for seating. And also, you can see that this cafeteria has a main corridor for circulation on either side, so it's going to allow additional square footage for keeping that circulation open and also keeping the path of egress open with that additional square footage. So that's why the district is looking to add the addition to the cafeteria on the exterior of the building. Let me scroll down a little bit. The materials of the exterior are to follow suit with the existing building. So we're looking at brick, storefront, and glass to match what the existing building has. So at the end, it wouldn't look like it was an addition, it would look like it's part of the original building itself. So in this rendering, the area with the black roof here is the addition. Currently, that's, so this portion here, even though it's showed in color, is part of the original school, and then this portion over here is also. So we're following the curve and infilling that portion. The infill is currently paved asphalt, so we're not building on a permeable surface. And like I said before, the brick is going to be brick to match the existing. And the glass, basically the curtain wall that's here, we're pulling it out, keeping the curve the same, keeping as much glass as we can, minus the area where the new servery is going. So at a high level, that's what we're doing and why we're doing it. Happy to answer any questions.
So are you allowing room for more kids to eat? Or are you just adding basically 2 more lines for kids to get through faster and so that kids can go back and forth in the lunchroom?
So, per code capacity, the additional square footage would allow a higher capacity in the cafeteria, but the school district is not increasing the capacity of the school. It's more to improve the function of how they lay out the cafeteria area. So the amount of students eating wouldn't change on how they use it, even though additional square footage would, per code, allow some extra seating. And then the serving area is purely to cycle through the students quicker and allow them to have more time eating their food. Also, with the 2 serving lines where they are, not getting them through created kind of a long line that congested the corridor because it was directly off of the building corridor.
I have a 6th grader, and so I know exactly what happens. But my concern is you want to do this addition, but it's not getting, if I'm understanding you correctly, it's not making the cafeteria bigger for more kids to eat at one time. It's just adding additional lines so they can get through faster. But because right now they eat so early and so late, like it's a large complaint. And so is that what am I understanding you correctly, or?
Let me try to reword it again. Can you go back to the?
There's more space there for
Right.
tables and stuff.
So
But
there
it's
is
much-
definitely more space. The addition is in its entirety is about 1,500 square feet, and as you can see, the servery is maybe a third of that. So this extra space is extra seating. What I was trying to say is the school isn't necessarily adding students.
Right.
They're gaining space so that the space they have for laying out the cafeteria area is going to be more generous, more comfortable, more flexible, and also allowing the corridor here to be free and not having to meander through tables because they didn't have enough space.
Are you sure it's big enough to accommodate kids to be, because you're doing an addition, is this
Yes.
is what they asked for, and this is what you gave them?
Yes.
There's
I'm
no
skeptical.
consideration for the common room right next to that, if you need more space? Because there's a
yeah.
common room
Right.
right there, and it's small, obviously.
Yes, and that was a part of the discussion with the school district. Even as an option of, do we need to build an addition?
Right.
Can we use that? But the answer was, it wouldn't be enough for how they want to use the space.
No, my question would be, do you need that in addition? Because I've had 2 kids go through there, and I've been in that cafeteria when kids are trying to get through there, and it is backed up.
Yeah.
And kids are eating at 1:30 in the afternoon or whatever, which is terrible for a young person when their metabolism is high. Me, on the other hand, I could probably never not eat lunch. But do they need that extra space? Was that discussed in addition to this 1,500 square feet?
Sure. So it was discussed, and unfortunately, the plan that we're showing here doesn't show a proposed table layout, but we did show them a table layout so that they could visualize the capacity that they want. And I believe offhand, 375-ish, give or take, was the capacity that they wanted to have. And there was that and more, again, creating, right now, they kind of have most rectangular tables with fixed seats that's cozy. And this will allow some more circular tables, more flexible seating, more space to meander through. So to answer your question, no, they didn't need that existing room that's labeled youth. That could remain as is. and still suffice the school district's needs.
Okay.
Oh, fifth grade will be out of there though.
That's
too,
right.
So that's right.
That's
Sorry
right.
about that.
So, I guess I have a couple of questions as a resident. Where do they get the money for this?
Referendum dollars.
It came off the referendum?
Yeah, this is part of all the expansion and Winnequa.
Pay on your way out.
Yeah, we're paying for it. And then the other one, I guess, is to your point, you have some very specific questions, you have students in there. Was there, not a public hearing, but was there information sent out to the parents of this plan? And, there's a lot of open meetings with all the other referendums and all that other stuff. This is a significant change, that could be an improvement, and I think there's a lot of input that people go through there.
Mhm.
Was there any open house on this?
So, earlier on in the process with the referendum, this was always a high action item for the school district to fix the issue of this cafeteria and the capacity in getting students through quickly, or quicker than currently. And at that stage, it was too early in the process to know exactly what that product would have to be to fix the problem. So now later on, we're here with the proposed addition in order to fix the problem. So the community was made aware of the goals or the objective of what we want to do at Glacial Drumlin, but at the time, we didn't have the renderings and the plan of what that addition would look like.
So there's been no community input then? Or parents, that's what the answer to that.
Plenty
Yeah.
of input, I
And
think.
I don't remember, we were, obviously that was a very touchy thing, the referendum. I didn't follow it as closely as maybe some of the parents who were having children in these schools, but I don't remember anything about Glacial Drumlin. I remember Winnequa, I remember security issues, I remember new school, I remember property. I remember the connecting property, that are actually, maybe I missed it. I don't remember this, but. What's your address?
At my work?
No, the school district address. The applicant address.
801, it's right in.
That's the project location.
Yes.
So I guess my, attention to detail, and I'm being a nitpicky because the school district drives me nuts. The applicant address, I think you guys have an address that's not Glacial Drumlin Middle School.
Oh, you're saying the school district?
The school
office?
district, yeah. Well, the school district is the applicant, and they listed a name, not an address, on the application. So, I don't know. I'm going to be annoying and point that out.
Okay. Any other questions?
The glass is safety. I take it like it's not able to be broken into. Like it's.
So the
It's right next to the entrance.
Sure. So the glass is a tempered glass like what they currently have. It's not a vandal-proof laminated safety glazing.
Okay, why not? Like, because it is right by the entrance.
Sure, by the sports field.
Yeah. I mean, because I think they were.
Well, in deference to all of the questions, at some point, I think that, I don't know if this is really our area. I mean, they hired architects, and I think that while we have oversight in terms of planning and that type of thing, I'm not sure that, I don't remember us asking any other applicant, well, are your windows, like, for the hotel and stuff? So I think we gotta be a little careful about that, or the number of kids that it does or doesn't serve. That's an issue that the school district has to deal with.
Right, but they haven't had a public hearing, so.
But that's,
I mean, I get what you're saying, but as a parent.
But
That's not the-
I don't think we can add.
well,
purpose of the plan commission.
Okay, but it is a question.
Question.
I mean, I would have liked those things to have been taken into consideration, I guess, when this addition.
But I don't think necessarily that they weren't. I mean, Strand has a certain standard as being architects. And so again, I appreciate that. I had, have kids that went through the Monroe Grove School District, but
That was a
they're,
different time though.
yeah, I know, it's a long time ago, and they didn't even have bathrooms or anything, so.
Walk uphill both ways in the
Right, yeah,
Walk to school.
but
It's like dirty.
I just think it's, I think we have to be a little careful in terms of some of the areas of asking the applicant. I think we're going a little bit astray of what we should be asking, and if he's prepared to answer, that's great, and if not, then.
Is it within scope, theoretical process question, to push it back, requiring a public hearing?
No.
Okay. No, it's not in scope?
It's not, it would be outside of the scope of our ability or authority to
Okay.
say we want a public hearing on this, because they'd say, well, okay, where does it say that in the code, and it doesn't. I'll defer to Aaron in terms of,
So how do we do
It's
public, how do
a
we do
site plan
public?
amendment that doesn't require
Yes,
So we
it's
did
just
public
like a
hearings on the other ones.
Business.
Yeah, and then essentially
when they're
should-
required.
this should be a discussion at the.
Because they were required.
Yeah, different processes require them and some don't. Conditional
Yeah,
use requires a
that's
public
cool.
hearing, plan unit development requires a public hearing. A simple site plan or site plan amendment doesn't.
When are you guys looking at doing this? Just this summer? Get this done?
This would be this summer.
Okay. I'll make a motion then to approve the request from the Mona Grove School District for a site plan amendment for the 1,500 square feet addition to the Glacial Drumlin Middle School cafeteria at 801 Damascus Trail.
Second.
This motion is second. Any further discussion? Having heard then, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? You abstain?
Aye.
Okay. Abstention. Motion carries.
You are abstaining or you're voting no?
Abstaining.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Item 13 then is discuss and consider a request from the Village of Cottage Grove Park and Rec Department for approval of the site plan amendment for Bakken Park to permit installation of a new shelter and a splash pad. Sean, are you, okay.
Still awake?
No,
Aaron, you staying there?
Might as well.
Hang in there.
You got this at this point.
I didn't want to sit next to Sean. You can stand over there. This is Dan Schmidt from MSA, who's kind of heading up the design of Bakken Park.
Thank you for having us out. So many of you probably know about the project. This is fulfillment of the splash pad and shelter portion of the master plan that was presented a number of years ago. The shelter is a two-season summer use unheated restroom building with an enclosed open shelter on the other side. Go to the next slide. These are the exterior renderings. The exterior is a combination of the brick and stone materials. We have in front, the white areas are a masonry, it's a cultured type stone veneer, and then the redder areas are a brick veneer. So this would be the view in the upper left is the view from the parking lot. There's planned to be a signage area there identifying the park. And then the three doors that you see there, the first, the double door is the mechanical access. Storage is the next, and then the front is the servery, usable gathering space. So that's meant to be not a concessions truly, but an area where groups that are renting the shelter can come in and set up Nescos and set up things like that. The Parks and Rec Department could sell some concessions out of there, packaged goods, things like that, but there's not planned to be a full-service kitchen. On the top right is the side that we're facing towards the splash pad. There's a concrete plaza there with some fixed tables, a drinking fountain, So it provides a kind of an in-between space. The existing trail on the site runs between the splash pad and the shelter. So this provides a second type gathering area outside of the main covered shelter. And the covered shelter itself is designed to hold somewhere between 8 and 12 tables. So a good-sized family gathering, shower, event such as that. And then, so that bottom right corner is a view looking north under the shelter. Structure there is a truss structure. The roofing material would be a steel shingle, the asphalt coating, so it looks more like a traditional asphalt shingle. And then the gray door you see in the middle is the servery entrance. So within there, there's a counter that you can set up Nescos. There's an exterior space, so if that's closed off and not part of a rental for the space, there's still plenty of room for Nescos. There's outlets on that wall. You can see right in here.
They're on the outside.
Yeah. So I mean, there's a counter on both sides. So there's counter space on the inside for kind of setup. If you were to have, say, a small wedding reception or something there, you could have a caterer set up in there. But it's not meant to be a place where food is prepared other than heating things up.
What's the capacity?
The covered shelter area, or I'd say it'd be probably between 40 and 60. It depends on exactly how you set it up, but if you were to move the picnic tables out and put chairs in there, it can probably hold more, but I think we show it in this picture with 12 tables. Some of the other renderings have 8, which will probably be a more comfortable day-to-day level. Next slide. This is the plan view, so we just kind of highlighted some of the different use areas in different colors. The blue are the restroom areas. There's a men's and a women's restroom, and then a unisex family restroom. In the family restroom, there's a changing bench. It's an area that could be used as either an adult changing area or changing area for children. And then there are 2 urinals and a stall in the men's room and 3 stalls in the women's room with baby changing stations in both of those restrooms. The gray area in the middle, kind of that tees off to the top, is the mechanical space for the building as well as for the splash pad system. It's a recirculating system, so there's pumps, a filter system, chlorine and muriatic acid storage in there, as well as all the plumbing and other mechanical systems for the building. And then the kind of left section of the T is storage that the Parks Department would be able to use for events or keeping other materials there. And the orangey peach color is that servery that we discussed. So there's a counter that runs along the south side, but the left side on the plan view. And there would be space for some upright refrigerators, coolers, and then a single basin ADA accessible sink, so you'd be able to wash out your stuff when you're done with the event before moving on. Or Parks was using it to clean things up. So these are just the flat elevations of the building again to show some of the different character. The windows that are shown above the doors are a polycarbonate, kind of not frosted, but it's a double pane glazed material, so it's not see-through, but it still allows light through to help kind of keep the bathrooms more open. And then the column that you see running up the middle on that side is the bump out in the women's room where the baby changing station is, but also provides an architectural break to the building. The ceiling height for the restrooms, I believe, is around 12 feet. So it's a stepped truss system. So in the servery area, it drops down to, I think, closer to 8. But on the east side in the restroom, it's a higher ceiling, so it feels a little bit more open in there as well. And then you see the cupola or small clerestory area on the top to help get extra light within the shelter area. So there are some lights in there for later afternoon, evening gatherings, depending on the time of year. That would also provide some additional lighting. But the park is open till, I believe, 10 o'clock typically shown, so the intent isn't to extend those hours, but provide lighting level on the exterior of the building, provide security level type access. This rendering is a little bit out of date, but generally shows the same conditions and as well showed the potential miracle field in the background. But you have the existing parking lot. There'd be 2 sidewalks that lead up to the building. The one on the north side to the left side of the page would be a larger kind of main promenade entry. And the second one has since moved a little further south due to some grading constraints, but would be kind of a maintenance or kind of server access. And then that main corridor runs up to towards the splash pad, and then there is a kiosk for park information, trail information, other elements like that. And there are 2 benches in addition to the 3 permanent fixed tables. And then across from that, you have a set of bike racks to serve trail users as well as those who are coming to the splash pad playground. Right now there's 12 proposed. And then on the far right-hand side of those, there's a bike fix-it station. So an opportunity for someone if they need to pump up their tires or change a flat. It provides a spot to hoist your bike up and tools that are tethered to it. And then the drinking fountain that I think showed up in one of the earlier renderings has a bottle filler and then an ADA accessible high and low feature, and that's just outside of the restrooms on the east side of the building. These are some of the materials for the site furnishings that have been proposed and accepted by the Parks Department. So steel benches with a recycled plastic seat, side opening trash cans to help keep rain out and limit the size and volume that people can toss in there so there's not big things sticking out that Parks has to deal with. Bike racks around the splash pad itself, there's stone seating as well as benches to provide different levels of accessibility and function, so kind of keep your stuff up off the ground and dry if your kids are running around. But we also provide options for breaks in there so people can have their companion access for wheelchairs as well as keeping a stroller next to some of the benches. And then the bottom is the permanent fixed tables that be in that plaza space, ADA accessible picnic tables, and then the drinking fountains and the outdoor shower, which is a requirement for a circulating splash pad, and that would be on the east side of the trail next to the splash pad entrance, a place to rinse off before or after, and that would drain into the splash pad system to be recirculated.
What was the other item right at the bottom?
Oh, it's an ADA accessible outdoor grill. So it's a small 24-inch grill that's right now on the southwest corner of the open shelter area. So if people wanted to cook out outside, that's currently located there.
Do we want to have that there? It tend to be messy, or obviously it's going to be hot, kids running around. Do we want to have that near in this area?
It's, other than Fireman's Park, it would be the second one that we have. Fireman's, we obviously have a larger one. It's something that we've talked about. It could be an issue as far as storage of colds and things like that, so we may have to provide that sort of a feature as well. But it's something that's been in the plan and not 100% sold on it.
I just see that as,
It can always be removed too.
yeah, I mean, I just see that as colds everywhere.
The location of it is on the opposite side of the heavy use areas within the pad, but it'd be easy enough to, if it's something that Sean doesn't want to have to maintain as part of the park system, to take off, and it wouldn't have a huge effect on the overall.
Do you want to kick that around with parks? I think that'd be a risk for us. I know it's nice to have something like that, but bring sandwiches instead of grilling.
Right now it would be located just for reference on this side here, so it's away from.
Okay, that's better, but still,
if
it's going to get messy. They always do. They don't stay clean.
Even mine at home.
It's a challenge.
It's not good there. We'll put it behind the building here and we can tailgate before.
We'll keep that in meetings. We'll need something. Yeah, just kick that around, I think. with the group.
Yes, we will.
Yeah. And I apologize if they'd like to put in more specific image of the splash pad itself. Big portion of this project, but if you want to zoom in on that a little bit, Aaron. So splash pad itself, we have the entry coming in here. This is an existing shade that serves the playground. So we're tying in, creating a more defined entrance into the existing playground. This isn't an exact replica of the playground, but it's part of the original boundary. But the rest of the site feature connections stay the same. So on the exterior, we had shown those stone benches are in all of those same locations, and then there are 6 regular benches that are shown around the pad as well. So there's a variety of seating options and areas for you to kind of leave stuff when kids are out there playing. The pad area itself has 2 shades that are proposed to be part of the design. One on the east side, one on the west side, and they'd have 1 or 2 tables under those potentially, depending on what Sean wants to go through. Right now we're showing 1 for potential use. The shower is positioned right about here at the main entry there, so you have access in and out. Allows separation from the playground, and wood chips in the sand area is enough. It should allow kids to kind of clean off in between the 2 before they're getting back into the splash pad. But part of making sure that connection is there is seeing that use is very popular to run back and forth between the 2 different types of play elements, and really extends the amount of time kids play out there versus just having a splash pad or just having a playground. They can go in the splash pad for half hour, and then they go play on the playground for another bit, and then come back into the splash pad. So kind of alternating there. So we have seen that very common and become a nice feature to have. So having a playground like already exists at Bakken is a good asset for the splash pad development as well. I guess with that, probably the best way to take questions from here.
Did you guys do the Nordic Ridge splash pad for Stoughton?
We had not.
You did not. Just no solar you're putting in on this?
Was that? No.
You have any ideas of putting solar in there to offset any of the energy costs? Or anything?
There weren't at this time, just based on cost of that side and that was not explored. The system is a recirculating system versus a flow-through, which was done in 2 parts. One for water conservation, but also the discharge. There was no suitable discharge point for the daily flow of the splash pad, which could be up to 50,000 gallons a day. And working with our stormwater engineers and the existing infrastructure that's on site, they would have put a pretty significant impact on the property owners to the northwest of the site itself, which already have water issues. And extending that infrastructure would have meant crossing over Vilas Road into sites that aren't currently developed and are kind of on a who knows when type of basis of when those features were going to get developed. So.
And it's not a continuous run splash pad, right? It's like a button.
Yeah, it has an activator that runs, I think it's about 4 minutes.
4 minutes,
between.
it's something real short.
Yeah.
Kids run over, push the button.
Yep. And yeah, if they eventually, kids pick up on pretty quick on that they have to do that, but yeah, if there's nobody there, it shuts off and only comes on during whatever hours parks have identified the park is open. Typically, we see them from 9 to 7, but it really depends on, in this case, when someone will be available. It's been discussed with Sean, part of his operating budget for maintaining the features, 2 daily checks.
Is that a timer for when they can be turned on and turned off? Like you don't have to physically go turn them on and turn them off?
It is a timer, yes.
Yep.
So it's a Nordic Ridge, nice splash pad if you get a chance to go down here. So it's the west side of Stoughton. Pavilion, similar, it's a little closer. There's a big button. Kids hit the button. Water goes for 4 minutes. Water shuts off.
No, I mean just as far as
the daylight
staff turning.
Yeah, it's
it should be that. Is it automatic?
Yeah,
like
it's
it's
automatic.
7 to daylight, or is it 7 to 7? Or
We can set it to whatever time we
whatever
want it to be.
So at midnight, I can go out there and push the button.
Right.
nothing's going to happen. So
You're not gonna get an email out to the park.
Or maybe
Well,
it
that's key.
Depends on how good a relationship you have with Sean.
Well,
And
Brian
Stan will
knows
open
that
it
you
up.
have
The water's already.
Yeah.
One nice feature of the difference between the Nordic Ridge one and this one is the flow-through versus the recirc, where we could choose to run water to every single feature at one time. The flow-through, you kind of pick and choose because you can't exceed that 50,000 gallons of water a day of discharge, so we won't have that problem. So we can crank it up really as much as we want because we're pumping that water through.
There's an increased play value. You also have slightly warmer water versus pulling 55 to 62 degree tap water. This water goes through, it's in a 2,000 gallon tank, so by later in the summer you might have 75 degree water versus that. So it's not quite a big shock too. So it's good and bad. Kids want to play that longer, which is good. But then for parents, the kids aren't going to want to leave, which aren't going to want to anyhow. But yeah, the play value does go up. You don't have to cycle things off quite as much. It's really a question of how much energy you're using and the features that we picked. So we were able to go with a higher flow and a little bit more interesting features than would have been otherwise had we stayed with the flow through.
For the shelter, I see we have shingles there. Was there any thought of steel?
Those are actually a steel shingle with a asphalt coating. So it
How long
creates.
do they last?
I believe the warranty's 50 years. I don't know 100%. But it's it creates a little softer look than steel.
Yeah.
It's a little bit cheaper than the standing steel seam type roofs are fairly expensive for commercial structures. So this is kind of an in-between. It's a longer lasting piece than a traditional asphalt shingle, but still has that softer look.
Yes, as part of my retirement, I plan to be the person who pushes the button each time.
Keep me away from it, and
Right.
only the kids find us.
You used up your time.
There you go.
Sean, we don't have any of this type of roofing on any other shelter. We don't. It's
Not
all
this type.
pretty much
We do have-
asphalt. This would be a good test to say future
Yes.
either repairs or re-roofs or whatever, if this works well, then that would be our kind of test of it. And I'm sure others have used it already. Clearly, they have a long-term warranty, so they stand by it.
I didn't mention the trim and the lapboard siding there is engineered kind of material, so I think it's LP Smart Side specifically or something similar. So it's a long-term pre-painted material, so low maintenance on that side as well. So
Stone material is something you can get graffiti off of.
yeah, we have a anti-graffiti coating that's usually part of the specification and becomes a sacrificial coating. So if it does get tagged, it usually has to get recoated, but it's better than having to scrape off a section of the brick.
Same breath and that is
Yeah.
not fun.
Sacrificial coating, it's not much of a
Aaron, what do you need from us?
Just an approval, I didn't have any conditions, and MSA's engineers were already involved in the whole design process.
Another.
Second.
Oh.
Motion
I had-
second.
I had one more question.
And I have one too.
Okay.
Now, discussion.
All right.
Please.
Are we able to put, like, I don't know if solar is even a thing to put on a shelter, but is it a possibility with this type of roofing if we wanted to?
I can't speak for certain. I can certainly talk to our architect and see. Part of it would be the orientation of the building, and if that would, the way it's now oriented, would be provide sufficient solar access, maybe more efficient to do a separated panel, the post style in the future. But
Solar tree.
I can certainly, I can ask for interesting to know too.
No, I forgot what there.
Oh, we'll wait.
No. I had a great moment. so
That's
it's
the
fine.
start, John.
It is the start.
We'll see them at Village Board.
First thing that
so-
goes. It'll come back to me at some point. Couldn't have been.
What were we
Could've
talking
been
about
that
before? The roofing,
It's fine.
the graffiti?
Oh, I know what it was. Security. Any consideration for cameras, anything like that? Because we're building it now. Is that the time, it's now the time to start talking about that. So any cameras, anything like that?
We're, I've been working with TDS, believe it or not, and they are
Good
going
for you.
to be running service. We met with them, and we inquired with Charter Spectrum. Charter wanted 20 to 25,000 to bring a service there. TDS is going to install it for free, so they're going to run it in between the rugby facility and all the shelter and bring it in and kind of service the whole park. They were also interested in the opportunity to possibly be able to serve the Wide Wilson area as well.
Okay.
So, yeah, we're working with them. They've been really great to work with.
Yeah. So part of the architectural plans will be chases and conduits for lighting, and then I think Sean was going to be coordinating with a vendor for the actual cameras on that.
And that's part of the internet part of it, is just being able to, so that we can, us and PD can also monitor those cameras from remotely.
Dare we ask where the pedestal will be?
As long as there's no camera on the bottom.
So there is going to be, no, it's a reality. There will be cameras on the building at when it's constructed, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And it'll also be something that we could monitor the splash pad as well.
Yeah.
Something that will, yes, there will be.
Yeah,
multiple.
something malfunctioned, wherever, somebody can get over there and sort it out.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So you're gonna be lighting at the splash pad area?
There'll be one site light. There's a kind of a small triangle across from the shelter. There's going to be one light there for security purposes mostly, just to kind of keep that lit up at night.
So we can see you.
Yeah. When you're out there at night, when Sean's left the
And
power
you'll be
button
on
on.
camera.
Second next year or two in this park, with these two projects, rugby, the Miracle League Field, and then the Vilas Road bike path, and all of that all together.
Glacial Drama.
And Clark Street getting
Yeah.
redone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we have a motion and second. Any further discussion? Having heard that, all those in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries. Thank you.
Yes.
All right, item 14. Thanks for staying with us here, folks. We have open a public hearing opportunity for public to provide input on proposed amendment to the Village of Cottage Grove zoning ordinance to create new single-family resident zoning district with a minimum of 7,500 square feet. No, nobody registered, so
Public,
so we'll
That's why we put this last. So we've talked about this several times before. The end of the staff report has the actual text that would go into the ordinance. It's primarily based off the SR4 existing single-family district. We're going to call this SR6. The SR4, the 4 refers to 4 units per acre. This would be 6 at the 7,500 square feet approximately. All the uses are the same as SR4. The main changes are the ones we talked about, the minimum lot size, 7,500 square feet, and the minimum lot width of 70.
Any questions for Aaron on this? I'll close the public hearing since nobody's here.
Remind me just of the core purpose.
This is
So the other,
this is
which is part of the comprehensive plan that you've been working towards the whole time, but
Yeah, so right now we just have the one single-family district with the minimum lot size of 10,000 square feet, which we did a comparison, and that's a very large minimum compared to the rest of Dane County. So this would allow us another option for higher density, smaller lots, more affordable housing.
Just for the SR6, you'd still have the SR4?
Oh yeah, we'll still have both in place. Things that are SR4 now aren't going to change. It just gives us another option.
And it gives
We'll
developers
use both.
another option to provide a different type of thing that they think that, the
In the
market
comp
will
plan, we
accept.
kind of identified areas where we might want that higher density versus the larger lots.
Motion to approve.
second.
Motion and second. Is there any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries. Item 16 is future agenda items. Anything, you got, we'll have a continuation of some of these things,
They're
yeah.
planning to come back next month, they get everything done, and then we'll continue on with Ferris Auto and take care of the changes you guys wanted for that.
Are you anticipating a middle of the month meeting?
Should be on the regular.
Just regular, you guys were good, okay.
Conditional use for Mexican restaurant liquor license.
In the Gray Wolf
Gray
building?
Wolf building.
Yeah. Anything else anybody can think of right now at this hour? All right, item 17 then.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion second, non-debatable, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, everybody.